Hey everyone at WonderCon 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. We are doing a panel today about all of these wonderful indie toy creators uniting and talking shop, secrets, struggles, successes, and stuff they want to brag about. So there are lots of amazing people on the panel, and I will shut up and just get right to them. So joining us today, Chris Gawrych from Amazo Toys. Go ahead and say hi to everybody, Chris.
Hi to everybody, Chris. Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming, even though it was a week early for my birthday celebration. Thank you. I got my cake right here. My birthday is coming up. Thank you for joining me.
Perfect.
And this is a bunch of my stuff. I don't know. I've done a bunch. There's some. Oh, I forgot. I should have taken this down, but something that Zwoosh will know. All right.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thunderling, Sectaurs, Space Force, a bunch of other things. And coming up is this guy right here. This will be my new project, which will be, yes, Jesus action figures. You heard it here first. Yes. So that's going to be coming up amongst a million other things. Brian. Oh, you know what? No, I wanted to say really quickly for my birthday, Brian, Thunder Tank. Can I have it by next week? Is that going to work?
No.
All right, never mind.
Well, that's a good segue. So next on our panel is Mr. Brian Flynn from Super 7, who, yeah, man, that Thunder Tank, I think we all want one. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us all about Super 7.
My name is Brian Flynn. I am the owner of Super 7, and we like to make stuff. I think that's a fair analogy at this point. I don't have a good, tight talking point. It's just I'm trying to make as much stuff as I can before people realize that I'm just a toy nerd and they quit letting me do it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we are super excited about some of the stuff that you guys have kind of teased and previewed over the last couple months, man. Very exciting.
Some cool stuff coming.
I think we could say that everyone on this panel is a toy fanatic, collector fiend, as well as making toys. I think that's what led everyone to it. We'll find out as we speak. Also on the panel and joining us for the first time, very exciting, Julie Kerwin from I Am Elemental. Julie, say hi to everybody and let them know everything about I Am Elemental.
Hi, everyone. Yep, Julie Kerwin here, and I Am Elemental was a Kickstarted company back in 2014. We designed female action figures that represent the superpowers that reside inside us all. And I will show you one. This is our Courage figure. She has more than 30 points of articulation, and we're really proud of her. Our Wisdom series was our second series. Justice is up next, and hopefully we'll get to that sooner rather than later. Anyway, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
I think that's a truly original line of action figures, and talk about like undiscovered country and new territory, like really cool stuff.
Thank you. I'm having the time of my life, quite frankly, but yes, it's been great. Thank you.
That's what it's about, right? So I've probably bought every figure these guys have made. John Russell from Dime Novel Legends, he has just absolutely hit me right in my cowboy Old West heartstrings. Tell us, introduce yourself and tell us about Dime Novel, man.
John Russell, my partner couldn't be here tonight, Paul Mundheim. We are the principals with Chicken Fried Toys. We have a 1/18 scale Western themed line that's really, as Gavin said, about nostalgia. It references a lot of lines that have come before. There hasn't been anything like this on the market in over 40 years as far as retail opportunities. So I'm really proud of what we've done. And our latest offering that's been a big hit is the Texas Ranger. We rolled it out at Joe Fest last year. Our factory got us some samples ahead of time. So it's been a good experience so far. I'm really excited to be part of the community, and I'm honored to be included with some of these luminaries here who've been in the business a very long time. So, just glad to be here. Yeah.
Glad to have you, man. So speaking of luminaries and people making it happen, we've got to talk to Craig and we've got to talk to Bill. Bill, Fresh Monkey Fiction. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us all about Fresh Monkey.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bill Murphy. I head up a little company called Fresh Monkey Fiction. We started a few years ago with our Amazing Heroes line. We've been trying to get our Eagle Force line done finally after many, many years of challenges, but they are real and they're coming. They're almost here. They are literally about to land any day. So it's been a crazy journey to get there, and I'm excited to get them in everybody's hands. And I'm happy to be here among everybody in this panel. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us, man. So Bill, I'm working on a line and I can't wait to tell everyone about it. But one of the most important things I can tell you now is that people like Chris, people like Bill, just about everyone on this panel really have helped me and guided me as I've started the journey. It's cool enough you guys are making awesome stuff. It's even better that you're open and helping and making a community and advising people and sharing secrets. So big props to all of you. And that includes our next contestant, Craig Owen from Zica Toys. And also, I've bought many of your figures. I have a shelf full of Sectaurs up there.
Awesome.
Craig, tell us all about it, man.
I'm Craig Owen, owner of Zica Toys. I've tackled a few IPs over the years. We did a line of Buck Rogers, Mego style figures, $6 Million Man, Kenner style, Sectaurs, comic adventure heroes, and this year I've decided to tackle the vintage style O-ring format with your G.I. Joe inspired type figures.
Very cool.
So far it's been smooth sailing with this, fingers crossed, and hopefully probably second quarter of this year we should have these out.
You know what I love about those style figures is how they've aged. Like if I have a G.I. Joe from 1982 and the O-ring breaks, there's something very just awesome about, you know, unscrewing them and putting in a new O-ring. Right. It's very relaxing. It's like like a bonsai tree for someone from the 80s. Right. So I love that you're making new ones, man.
We'll call that action figures Zen.
Yeah, exactly. And our buddy Paul is not in Zen because he's calling from 3 a.m. across the world to join us on this panel. Paul behind Articulated Icons, really cool martial arts themed line the last couple years. I think there's more on the way. Also, man behind the Zwoosh, which I always have trouble saying. Paul, introduce yourself.
No, I'm awake. Paul Wolf from Denmark. Grew up in San Antonio, Texas, born in Seattle, been in Denmark since 98. Started the Zwoosh back in, 2002, doing reviews of toys and action figures and having a fantastic community. Started a Kickstarter a couple of years ago with some fantastic designers, and we've been trying to crank out some toys since then. We will have our last Articulated Icons line coming up here. It's actually in a container in LA right now, and we'll be exploring some new themes along the way. Hopefully within the next year we'll have some new items out, so we're really excited, including a license, hopefully.
And they're such great figures, and one of the things I like about them is you know, you can keep reconfiguring them, and like, you know, I'll take off the shelf, put on new stuff that it came with. So I keep refreshing them, which is, as a collector, fun. Speaking of collectors, I have an awesome co-moderator named Rich Mayerik, who is a TV and podcast producer, and probably not as annoying as me when talking to guests. So with that, Rich, introduce yourself and take it away.
Yeah, my name is Rich Mayerik. I'm producer at Nacelle. I produce Toys That Made Us and A Toy Store Near You on Amazon Prime, and a bunch of new podcasts, and I'm just a huge collector, and I'm happy to be here with all this amazing talent. So thank you for having me, Gavin. It's great.
Thank you for joining us, man. So because there's a million of us, I'm just gonna go a mile a minute, and I'm gonna go to our first question, which I will aim at a couple of folks on this panel, starting with Julie. What led you into making these toys? Like, when was the moment you said, I'm going to do this?
Well, I always have to go back in time to 2012. And it was really born out of a question, you know, and it's really relevant to think about the fact that this is 2012. because the question was, why does Spider-Man appeal to a boy of 4 and a man of 40, but there was no female equivalent? At the time, Wonder Woman was really, 90% of her audience, or at least sales, were to adult male collectors. The movie was not even a twinkle in anyone's eye. And I had buckets and buckets and buckets of action figures because I have 2 boys. And so that was the genesis of it. And, I always say that it's sometimes these strange ideas come out of the ether in a way that you don't expect. And so what was happening is I was asking myself, what would I have to do to an action figure to make it appeal to a girl brain? Actually is what happened, because I heard a brain expert speak, and she said, girls and boys are as different from the neck up as they are from the neck down. And so I went to bed one night talking to my husband about this, and I woke up the next morning and I said, oh, I have the answer. It's not superheroes, it's superpowers. And I took the periodic table of elements and I started writing in creativity, bravery, all these things. He came home, I made him buy like 30 domain names. And the rest, it's true story. The rest, as they say, is history. But, I just say that the internet's like a genie in a bottle. I could have never done this 10 years earlier, or 5 years earlier. I knew within the first few weeks we would be doing a Kickstarter to test the hypothesis. Like all of these things that were suddenly possible is what allowed me to do it. But that was the genesis.
And here's a little follow-up question, which is for everyone, how many on this panel own I Am Elemental figures?
Me.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So
that's over half our panel. And did you anticipate when you made these figures that boys were going to like them too?
Well, that's a trick question, because the question that we asked at the beginning of the Kickstarter is, where are the action figures for girls? But I'm raising 2 boys. I do not have any daughters of my own. And so one of the things that was really important from the very beginning was that I wanted them to be really cool and forward thinking enough that my boys would want to play with them and their friends would want to play with them. So that was the intent. Did I know that the collector community would be the ones that would have, we were fully funded in 48 hours, and it was not parents buying it for their children. It was a collector community. And one of the things I just got very lucky about is that collectors were early adopters of Kickstarter. And so we had that very early on. And, when I proudly showed you my Courage figure with 30+ points of articulation, that was my kind of love letter to the collector community, because our smaller figures, have debatable 9 to 11 points of articulation. But because we had such a tremendous response and love from that community, from the collector community, we really tried to push it out when we did our larger figure. So I thank you guys. Thank you all. I always say that we only get to do what we love to do because of your generosity. And I'm so grateful. And I love every one of you and what you're doing too. So it makes it. And Paul, by the way, Zwoosh mentioned us during our Kickstarter campaign. And so he contributed Paul directly to our sales. So thank you, Paul.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. I've never gotten to thank you, but thank you.
Ah, awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I want to ask Brian from Super 7 the same question about, when was the moment, you said, I'm going to do this, and what was it for?
Well, we back-ended it into a different thing. So what happened with Super 7 was, in the year 2000, I worked on a book for Chronicle with 2 of my other friends about vintage Japanese toys called So Crazy Japanese Toys. And that book did well, and then Chronicle wanted to do a second. The guy that was spearheading the book said he didn't want to do it. At that time, my partner, Mark Nagata, and I were interested in doing something. And I just went back to my old days in punk rock and skateboarding. And I was like, let's just make a fanzine. I'm not ready. I'm not going to do another book. It's too much work, but I can knock out a fanzine. The difference was I was already a working graphic designer, and the advent of digital photography had happened. So I could make a professional looking magazine. And that's what, so it didn't look like photocopies. At that time in Japan, how they subsidized magazine sales for Japanese collectibles, because you had AFN and Tomart already going in the States. If you wanted Figure King or Hyper Hobby, they would partner up with a Japanese manufacturer to put a recolor of a toy, you know, as a mail-in that you would cut up. You have to buy the magazine, physically cut the coupon out of the middle of the page, which is already difficult for collectors, and mail that in with your money to get a recolor of a vinyl. So we wanted to replicate that experience in the magazine. So from the first magazine, we did 2 recolors of figures, one with M1 and one with bare model, and did the coupons and send in your money and the whole thing. And that started with recolors of existing tooling that then moved into new tooling that we wanted to see from their licenses, that moved into our own characters, then moved into us making our own vinyls in Japan, that then moved into us making more like action figures and stuff and getting licenses. So we didn't start with sort of like, I need to go create this, but I can say that up until we started making we had definite hurdles, like making things with companies in Japan that were already making vinyls. That was one hurdle, but then we worked our way through that. Making our own characters that no one had ever seen in Japanese vinyl and wondering if that was going to be successful was another hurdle. And then when we get to sort of the Super Shogun Stormtrooper or the Reaction Aliens, same thing. The next hurdle of, will collectors and people be interested in that? And I think every single time you do something like that, it's a big leap of faith. But I don't know. I feel like if you know it's the thing you want, there's other people that want it as well.
As far as challenges and tackling the challenges that come with starting an indie toy company and getting it off the ground and getting your figures made, how many of you guys have faced a particular, notable challenge or obstacle that, took some ingenuity to get through?
By far, my biggest hurdle has been factory problems, trying to find a factory who could follow through with what they initially promised, who had the capability to do what you wanted. And had it not been for Chris, I would probably be in a very, very, very bad place right now because he managed to bring us a factory option that so far has just knocked everything out of the park. And but I would say for anybody wanting to get into this business, if you don't have that particular aspect locked down, you're in for most likely a world of hurt trying to get through this.
And you're working with a factory in China, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's debate. People say, oh, can you work with factories in Mexico or Vietnam or the US? It seems like China is still the place to go. Does everyone kind of feel that way?
Yeah.
China's where it's been. I think we've moved to about 50% in Vietnam. But it's a different beast. The tooling still gets made in China. Our card backs still get printed in China. We just have to be doing injection and assembly in Vietnam.
Interesting.
So, and it's a Chinese-owned factory in Vietnam.
That is, I've heard. I know a few in Vietnam, and I've heard also, Brian, maybe you can confirm that it's really the same problems in Vietnam, like, just the same production problems, the same miscommunications or whatever as it would be in China for the most part, from what I've heard.
I realize at this point we're running at a slightly different scale than most everyone else. So for us, it's just, you've got to be able to start with a couple projects that don't have a deadline so that you can go through the training of the factory of what you expect. How much ABS and PVC you're mixing into which parts and what durometer and how the fit needs to be done and how the friction and tooling needs to happen. You've got to be able to spend 9 months on a project to get them up and running, because the first ones are going to be wrong. And then once you get them up and running and they know what you expect, it's very literal and they will just execute as you have said. But yeah, that was a lot of it. I mean, we spent almost a year just working on 2 projects in Vietnam, that just so that we could get what we wanted out of them. And I think that's what everybody runs into with the factory. So when you guys are going to a new factory, like we're starting up another new factory, we assume it's going to take us a year just to get them to get the first figure right. But once they get the first figure right, they can replicate it pretty easily. Then it's just fine tuning. But that's the hardest part, is making them understand what you expect, because they're simply looking at it as, I'm putting plastic in a mold and pulling it out. What's important to you may not be important to them.
Right.
Yeah, that's our experience too. In terms of completion, follow through.
And what's a red flag, guys? Is there a tell? Is there a red flag in an early conversation with a factory?
Bill, do you want to take that one?
You know what? I can answer for everyone.
Done?
When the factory is not communicating and not replying or taking forever, that's a red flag right there. That's your first red flag.
Yeah. When your representation doesn't get back to you on an untimely manner, is you should start being concerned. I say there's something that's unique too that we've run into that could potentially be a stumbling block, is when your factory or your representation doesn't come to you when they hit a snag and are trying to figure out a way to absorb a cost to keep you happy, rather than just saying, this is going to cost us a little extra more than we anticipated. Can we work out some kind of a split deal or something? And more often than not, if it's a legitimate problem, as a creator, as a company owner, I'm like, yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Let's get to the end product that we want, and everybody stays happy. You make money, we make money, everybody's good. But when they don't talk to you about that kind of stuff, there's certainly problems that you can't solve as they pop up, and then that leads to some butt hurt and everything else down the line. So,
As far as this year though, with COVID and everything that's happened with distribution and shipments, has there been anything particular that threw you guys for a loop or a curveball in just dealing with 2020 and every obstacle that it came with?
I mean,
I think for me, the biggest challenge has been trying to book designers and sculptors. A lot of guys have been overbooked. A lot of guys were, especially for us small guys, we're dependent on people who are already in the industry, already working. And a lot of their schedules were being jerked around left and right because of the larger companies booking, overbooking, rebooking, not knowing their own timelines. So it's been hard finding talented, available, experienced sculptors.
Interesting. I think that's fascinating. And the sculptors you work with, are you digital, like ZBrush folks, like, or is it physical?
Right. No, it's ZBrush, and I've been lucky enough to find some brand new young talent on a global scale, and basically have to train them up from scratch. But it's been an experience, and that's been one of the big delays that we've had in doing anything new or announcing anything new over the last year, is trying to find someone to work with. And luckily, I've found a couple of people out there who are hungry and young and have some good talent.
So let me ask this for everyone, and we'll start with you, Paul. Say I'm in school, I love toys, I've been doing ZBrush. What's something important I need in my toolkit or in my samples, or like what would set me aside from other people, or what is it I can show that tells you, oh, this up and coming sculptor might be able to do a toy for me?
Understanding of like articulation and stuff, definitely. The more they understand that engineering, the better. The less you have to take that away from China, the better, because there's been instances where I send them a factory something that's engineered one way, and they'll send it back engineered another. So then you got to start over again and get them to fix that particular issue.
Wow. Anybody else on that one? Advice for young digital artists, ZBrush type folks that are looking to get into toys and work for people like you?
I think the hard part for a lot of those guys is ZBrush isn't sculpting a toy. If you don't understand how it comes out of a mold and how parting line works, how,
Craft.
It's got to be front and back. You can't have undercuts. You can't have all this other stuff. It's very easy, especially when you're young, to get lost in ZBrush because you can zoom in forever and you can pack it full of detail. And then when you go to make that thing, there's so much detail that it just becomes noise, and the figures actually don't look good. You have to know when to pull back on those things and keep it a little bit cleaner and tighter. And obviously, secondarily, when you look at sculptors, so many of those guys are talented, or guys and gals are talented, and they will just sit there and say, well, I can make it look like anything you want. I don't always go for somebody that can make look anything. I go to certain people that do certain things. Like this person does heads really well, so they'll do heads. This person will do bodies, or this person will do clothing. And you break up the parts at a certain point. So you always are kind of looking for people that have an aesthetic or a point of view around a certain thing. Like, you know, there's plenty of people where it's like their heads are atrocious and 19 veins in the neck and popping off their head. But then the cape will be amazing looking. And you're like, okay, that guy's really good at clothing.
Yeah,
We will find him.
I now want an action figure that's just all veins. Can someone here get me that? Because I mean,
I'm sure
I-
there's a Hulk
I-
one somewhere.
Yeah, Hulk one or Venom or something like that easily. Mass market, no problem.
Yeah. I was gonna say just in regards to with the sculpting, since I'm also a sculptor, I would say it's really know your strength, because like kind of like Brian was saying, there's a lot of different angles to it. Like I said, you could be great at head sculpts, you could be great at, fabric, clothing, drapery, muscle, anatomy, even if it's just cutting up for articulation. Like each one of those has its own specific strength, and no one's going to know all of them. I mean, I know I'm like in the middle on everything. Like I'm not amazing at heads and I'm not amazing at articulation, but like I kind of understand all of it.
right.
So
Which
it's
is great for
definitely, I'd say,
managing. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it's definitely for these new guys. It's like, it's really know what your strength is and work on that. You can work on the other stuff secondarily, but you got to see what are you really good at.
That's good.
I just wanted to throw in on top of what Chris said that when you're dealing with a digital artist, finding somebody who can understand how stuff drafts out of a mold. I mean, coming at things from a resin casting standpoint, because that's where I started at. You have to understand how things are going to draft out of a mold so that you get the maximum number of pulls, and that still applies to tooling technology in terms of cutting steel and things like that. So having somebody who can understand what you say when you need to orient this way, and the undercuts are always an issue because you want the most detail you can get. Say you have a raised collar or something like that, that is not going to draft out of the mold the right way. So that it's easy in manufacturing. So you have to consider meeting the factory halfway with those demands in terms of artistic capability, so that you get the best possible product that represents your end idea the most. That's something I would say is take time to look at that as a digital artist, and kind of wrap your head around it.
Of like great advice and feedback. I was wondering, as far as any of you guys in particular with the indie toy scene the way it is, do you guys have any particular insight on the relationship with you and the fans and your audience that you're making toys for? I feel like in this kind of realm, there's a better accessibility and relatability between creator and fans that you didn't normally have with some of the bigger companies. There wasn't quite as much of a distant monolith that just kind of made toys and then people bought toys. I feel like I'm hesitant to use the word synergy, but I feel like there is an element of that with people buying indie toy maker toys these days and the creators themselves. Do you guys have any sort of insights or observation on any of that?
I think it's a double-edged sword.
Oh yeah.
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 I can imagine.
Yeah,
Everyone knows that.
you get to engage with your community, with your target audience a lot more easily with the internet, social media, and things like that. But at the same time, that gives the fan groups, and I don't mean this in a negative way, that gives them a sense of entitlement and ownership in what you're doing, and it's easy for them to go past the bounds of good taste or good communication, and even get into some things that are unsavory for everyone concerned. So I mean, it is a double-edged sword. I think it's great to be able to talk to my guys, my 300 or 400 group of guys on our Facebook page who are hardcore and going to buy everything we do, because a lot of those guys have some great ideas and they're awesome to bounce ideas off of. But some of the less involved people, or some people that are new to the fan community, may go too far, or may even get abusive. I mean, I've had to escort a couple of people out the door a couple of times, and that nobody wants to have to do that.
Yeah.
Fandom
is always like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Well, there's no positive outcome in that situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And there is, I think, to Rich's point, it's kind of, we're all still kind of learning this, right? It's a new, the corporations that like manufactured toys for kids that we all loved. you know, I mean, maybe they had like a PR person and they dealt with like this old model, but this kind of newer, kind of more community based. I mean, I look at everyone on this panel, and I think every single one of you has a community around you, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, I guess there are pros and cons to it.
You know, a good example.
Yeah.
A good example is Brian.
Yeah.
Like with the Thunder Tank, let's say.
Yeah.
You know, there's you know, look, I put in for the Thunder Tank. Like, I want to get it. It's going to be here in the office. We're going to be playing with it. And you know, there's a lot of people that are supporting it, and a lot of people that are, you know, have questions. And Brian puts out, like, you know, I've seen it before. He puts out like this beautiful, detailed, and, you know, kind of simplified, just, you know, explanation as to like the Thunder Tank, like, why does it cost X amount? Because there's all these factors involved that obviously nobody knows about. But you know, I like that he's putting it out there and saying, well, look, these are the factors, you know, and it's you this direct, you know, communication with everyone. And, you know, then people can decide for themselves, but at least they can get a better understanding. I'm all about educating the customers. And that's like when, you know, like when he does that, I mean, we all do it, but like when I see him do it on Instagram, I love it.
Yeah.
Brian, to that point, was the Snake Mountain playset just a monster in learning how to deal with communicating?
Yeah, I mean, we could always communicate better. You know, the thing, you know, there's definitely people on my team that get very, very frustrated at some of the social media stuff. I mean, for the most part, it's positive, but even if you have 3% grumpy, you know, that grumpy rises to the surface. You know, the thing is, the reason that people complain is because they care.
Right.
If they didn't care, they wouldn't complain about it. And usually their complaints are based on misconceptions of what's happening. We get a lot of complaints about pricing because they're all like, this can be made for 20 cents in China. And it's like, all right, great. You find me the factory that can make it for 20 cents and I'll go there.
Right.
Like, they all have this sort of 1980s vision of like, you know, a whole bunch of people stitching soccer balls for pennies a day. It's like,
right.
China's like on the fast track to becoming the world's biggest economy. They don't, as everybody here knows, the factory prices keep rising. It's harder to get workers because China doesn't want to work in factories anymore. Right. They're moving on to the next stage of, you know, economic growth where they become much more white collar job oriented and move their manufacturing out of country, which is why it's getting more and more expensive. A lot of it, you know, same thing. People don't understand the time and effort that goes into a lot of things. So I just try to, rather than get mad at people that are just slinging 17 comments of crap about something because their pre-order's 2 weeks late.
Right.
You know, it's like it's because they want the toy.
Yeah.
You know, and you're ripping me off. I'm like, I'm not ripping you off. It's just not here yet because it's not as simple as you think it is. And I always just try to come back to, there's always two factors. Is if it was really simple to do, everybody would be doing it. And it's not simple to do. And two, like nothing ever goes exactly as planned. Right. Like we all build in buffers, we all build in everything. But, you know, what we find is by the time the product comes in hand, I usually get the people that are most vocal, I'll get some sort of DM going, hey man, I'm really sorry. This thing turned out great.
Right. Yeah. I've probably sent a message like that.
One thing that Brian said that's really important is that, you know, these folks, your fan community is passionate, and they need to understand that any delays are not ever personal. And not only that, why would you want to scuttle your company over a $200 pre-order? You know, the ding to your reputation, the ding to your ability to fulfill, you know, perception, all that. That's just silly. You know, nobody's going to do that, not willingly. So
speaking of the fan community, you know, Julie, I think you probably have a more unique following that's, you know, a little bit different than maybe some of the other folks on the panel. Like how has it been doing the, you know, direct communication and you know, building this like kind of extended family of followers and friends and fans and stuff?
You know, it's funny. I don't want to sound Pollyanna because let me just say, I have this 1/3 rule that I live by. And, you know, you say 1/3 of them are going to love you, 1/3 of them are going to hate you, and 1/3 of them aren't going to care whatsoever about you. And I think that and that goes in life, right? Anywhere you go, a work environment, or you're, you know, the collector community, you're going to have people who love you and people who don't. And so I feel that living my life, understanding that, means that when the occasional complaint comes in, you know, I don't take it personally. Having said that, I'm very lucky because I sell superpowers for a living. I don't really sell the action figure in terms of the concept. It's this very positive, empowering concept. And so what I find is that my audience, generally speaking, are really wonderful, happy people, because they're feeling powerful. And so yes,
it's fun. I never thought someone would call up to be a jerk about getting courage. Where's my courage?
Right. Well, it's funny, our biggest complaint actually was that there was no backstory. We did get, some of the collector community did early on accuse us of being lazy because we didn't have a backstory. And that was deliberate, because we were making these for children, and we were very adamant that we wanted children to be the creators of the story. We don't want to spoon feed them story. But of course, you have to listen to your customers, and our customers want story. And so I'm in the middle of development on an animated series that I'm hoping to, at some point, I was supposed to go to LA March 12th, 2020. So we all know what happened there.
Yeah.
But, you know, hopefully that will someday happen. But to circle back to what you're saying, you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I alluded to earlier is that our audience ended up being much broader than we ever imagined. And I do think that it's very special, because I have this wonderful collector community who've been so supportive. I mean, even the littlest things, like we didn't put peg holes on the bottom of the original Courage figures. And again, it was a choice, because we said they were toys. And basically we were told from day one, that was a mistake. You have to put peg holes on everything. So, you know, I'm learning from the collector community as I go. But anyway, I really do, as stupid as it sounds, I consider them kind of like the equivalent of pen pals. I say I have pen pals all over the world, and it's really a wonderful thing, because as everyone on this panel knows, you know, you make rookie mistakes, you have problems along the way. Our very first action figure round, you know, ended up sitting on the coast of California during the dock workers strike of 2014. And I had to email every single pre-order customer. You know, it was more than $250,000 worth of sales sitting on the coast of California. And I do think that because I personally and individually emailed every single person, you know, we only lost about a dozen orders, and people were really kind, but then they were fans for life.
Oh, right.
And so, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm blabbering
on. Well, you did your due diligence, you did your work, and you communicated, and you know, that's a big part of it.
I do think that that's a huge thing. Like, you know, I think what Brian does is brilliant, because if you're upfront about everything, then nobody can complain.
Totally.
I do. If I could really quickly, I have 2 daughters, and I have a handful of the figures, and they make up their own names, number one, for the characters. But, you know, the figures are always, you know, kicking Lex Luthor's butt or Dinosaur's butt or whatever, because it's a mix of toys, because I'm a guy. So, you know, so I just wanted to let you know about that.
That's amazing. Thank you.
You know, speaking of fandom, I wanted to ask real quick, I wanted to aim a question at Craig and at Bill, because you guys did something that's brave, which is you dug into some nostalgia. So you're making product that people already have strong opinions and emotions about, because they're properties from when all of us, you know, 40-something-year-old nerds are passionate about. Like, was it a challenge to do Sectaurs as opposed to, you know, some other original property? Was it a challenge to do Eagle Force, or was it a strength? We'll start with Zica, with you, Craig.
Sectaurs was definitely a challenge, because a lot of people, you know, wanted the the insect companions, the larger mount insects. They wanted all that stuff that they, remembered from the original launch of the line, the original Fleeco line. And, as everybody here knows, I mean, that would have been insanely expensive to try and put everything out for wave one of my version of the Sectaurs is what was available back when Coleco did it. So that was my biggest gripe I would hear from people is that they need the companion pieces, they need the mounts, and I was like, it's not an option right now. It's just not financially feasible. So that was my biggest hurdle for that particular line, which again, they were the most vocal about the insects. They really wanted those insects, especially the puppet ones.
Yeah, I have to say that your figures are gorgeous. I know I said it on the last panel. The finishing and the paint on those things is stunning.
Thank you.
Bill, what about you with Eagle Force, man? I love Eagle Force.
Yeah, I was worried because we were the original line was small 3-inch die cast, and we were moving to like a different scale. And on top of that, we also kind of aged up the story. I'm a huge like story guy for pretty much anything I do. Has got to have some kind of backstory in it. So I was a little worried that fans were gonna, not react well to it. But for the most part, they were fine. Like they weren't upset that we didn't do like 3-inch die cast metal figures. They were just kind of interested in the characters. And even with sort of the characters aging up, and maybe being a little different, we actually ended up having a lot of people embrace that, which was really good. Yeah. But there's still a demand for some of that more classic stuff as well. So I think that's our next step too, as we get into getting this first wave delivered, is kind of moving to appeal that to that audience also. So I think I had a really good reaction, I think, for most folks. They were kind of happy. Also, Eagle Force originally wasn't a huge line either. It wasn't like at the scale like a G.I. Joe. So there were some fan base out there, but it wasn't huge. So I think people were more interested in it just kind of coming into a more of a modern scale, I think.
The fan base that was there was very vocal about the gold paint.
They did, yes, they did want
yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Bill. When we get our Kickstarter fulfillment here in the next couple of months, are you still shipping those cans of gold spray paint with them?
They're
like
going to go, yeah,
unless
people ordered gold spray paint so they could spray paint their own figures.
Every line needs a gold variant.
Yeah.
Yes, and a clear. We always need a clear figure and
a dark.
Glow in the dark.
Glow in the dark, yeah.
So everyone here on this panel has proven that there's not this small monopoly on companies making toys. You guys have all figured out your avenue in this world. If there's someone out there watching this panel who is thinking about getting into this business and has a line idea of their own, do you guys have a piece of advice for them, like a way to get
started?
Do it.
Don't do it. That's the only advice. Don't do it.
Yeah. Bottomless wallet. Bottomless wallet. Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to have a clear goal in mind.
Absolutely.
And it's either, do you want to just do it to have your product come out on the market and that's it? Like, I've made a toy and you don't care about losing money, making money, etc. Or do you have a bigger ambition? Do you want to do this on a regular basis? Do you want to be able to produce something, a collection, a wave, a series every 6 months, a year? Have that business goal or just that general goal in mind. It's easy to come up with a user story and say, I want to make a toy, but there's a whole tree under that. And you need to really sit down and decide beforehand, what do I want to do?
I say that there's a really big difference between running a Kickstarter campaign and running a toy company. And you have to make sure that you want to do both, because when the Kickstarter campaign is over, you have a company to run.
Really good.
That's some sage advice right there.
Yeah. I think the thing that's the trickiest, and we've been fortunate that we're starting to transition into obviously bigger and bigger stuff, but it took us, arguably 15 years to get to that point. Is if you're expecting it to just jump out and be successful, there's going to be a giant asterisk on that. You've got to make it because you want to have it. If the success comes, that's great, but it's not going to be an overnight sensation. It's not going to do that. And I think you just have to make toys that are genuine to you. I mean, we've all know people or have seen projects where people said, well, why don't we make this? Because I know people like that, instead of making the thing they want. And then when they have a storage unit full of something they didn't really like, and they got a whole lot of money sitting in it because they thought it was going to be successful and it wasn't, those people get burnt out very quickly. You know, if you instead made the thing you dreamed of having, and if you still have a storage unit in it, you kind of go, well, sucks that nobody ever noticed it, but man, I got this thing I loved and I'm happy. And I think you start there, and then you kind of have to build on small success, and it takes a long time. You know, everybody's like, oh, I'm going to get this in Target, or why wouldn't Walmart buy this? And it's like, you don't even know how complicated that is and how many people are trying for one peg at that. Getting a peg in Target is it's near impossible in some ways. You know, that represents to a company like a Hasbro or a Mattel $1 million+ in sales, just one peg, because they book pegs twice a year. You're not going to go there. And everybody that tells you, oh, if you make that, I'll buy it, they'll never buy it.
Yep.
Oh, if you make that, everybody buy it. Okay, know that that's not going to happen. You just have to, I think if you're going to get into this, it's an interesting place. We talk about this at the office a bunch. We're really sort of living in a golden age of action figures right now. If you even compare to stuff that was made 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, no one was making this stuff at this volume, at this variety, across as many scales and form factors. There is so much out there and so much good product out there that it's never been like this before for collectors, and they have more than they could choose from across the board. So you've just got to be able to start making stuff that you want to have and try to go slow. It's not going to blow up overnight. It's not going to do all these things. And you're going to run into roadblocks along the way, because if it was easy, as I said earlier, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. And it's not anywhere as easy as it looks.
What are you
Well,
talking
yeah.
about?
Just to piggyback on Brian and Julie, because it's like, those are both excellent points. You know, like I get people all the time asking me about, and you know, they're usually wanting to do a Kickstarter because that's a smaller level. And they think, you know, hey, if I put it on Kickstarter, yeah, you know, I'll fund and blah, 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 blah. But everyone that I talk to, I always tell them the same thing. I'm like, you know what, if you were going to do a Kickstarter, you have to go in with the mindset of you're not going to make any money. Like, you're going to pay for tooling and then everything else, production fees, Kickstarter fees, everything. If you break even, that's a success. So you can't even go in thinking about it that you're going to make money, you know? So it's just like Brian said, it's you go in thinking about, you want to make something that you love. And if it is a success, then you go to Julie's point where now you have a company to run.
Right. So on that, and we want to be a little mindful of time, but I will ask everyone, what is something you did not anticipate from Kickstarter that you would warn people to be mindful of as they launch this adventure in their life?
The fees.
Yeah, the fees,
Yeah,
for sure.
fees.
Yeah.
Well, the fees, but also, you know, I thought I had done so much research. I watched hundreds of videos and I did all of this, you know, due diligence. And it really wasn't until after my Kickstarter was already over that I was informed that, you know, three quarters of all successful Kickstarter campaigns raise about $10,000 or less. So, you know, you hear the Oculus stories and you get all excited about the potential money to be made. And the collector community is very generous and does do, you know, better than a lot of other industries. But, you know, you do have to be mindful of exactly what Kickstarter can do for you.
Mm.
Yeah. How much oxygen is in the room for what you want to bring to the market? You know, how much can you reliably expect those people to bring to your project and help you get it over the hump is something that you really should focus on if you're going to do a Kickstarter, and be prepared to fail. You know, don't just assume because you've got something cool, it's going to be a success. Be prepared to fail. Be prepared to have your first Kickstarter go down and not get enough notoriety or not get enough traction.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. Chris
had given me some advice that I thought was very interesting, is also don't you don't have to kick yourself when it fails. You can relaunch. You can learn from it. Chris, you could speak to that to everyone. I thought that was very sound advice.
You know, you fail. So what? Then you restructure and you replan and try and figure out, okay, well, you know, what went wrong, and you know, just try and get it. Maybe you have to lower, you know, what you're offering so that your total, you know, funding goal is lower. You know, there's all different things. But you know, try again. There's no harm in that. Some people think like, oh, you know, it's gonna look bad if I fail, and then, you know, it's not gonna look bad. You tried, so what? So it didn't fund. You know, I'm gonna put out my, you know, next line, and I hope it does well, but I'm expecting it to do, you know, maybe mediocre at best. You know,
Well,
we'll see.
You know, one thing that you said there that's important, that some folks don't consider when they're working on these things is that, you know, say you get 75% traction with the community you're aiming for, but you don't make your funding goal. Well, and then you offer again 6 months or a year down the road, that develops a sense of urgency in those people that missed out on it the first time, and also were there and are like, okay, well, we really need to step up and help get this thing off the ground if we want to see it. So that sense of urgency is one of the positive things you can take out of a failure. I mean, I've got a couple of buddies who do this as well, on different projects, and you know, their first ones failed and then they brought it back and it was much more successful with the same stuff, you know. So Jason Bienvenu, Bobby Valla, those guys, you know, so they have turned what could be a negative into a pretty positive situation for themselves. So
let's talk more immediate future and what everyone here is up to next, before we end the panel. Would love to hear just a little sound off from everyone here, as to what can we see, what were you excited that's coming, and where they can find you, and just all that kind of stuff. Bill, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, as I said, like the Eagle Force stuff is hopefully landing soon. And you guys can find me at freshmonkeyfiction.com. And then what's next after that, after everything gets filled through the Kickstarter, will be sort of a next wave of Eagle Force that focuses on more of like characters on from the original line.
Awesome.
Yay.
Awesome. I know. Here's my money. Julie, how about you and I Am Elemental, or any other lines, or what's going on?
Yeah, so right now I've been advised to slow down on production because the series that we're developing starts with season 1 is series 1. And so it's been suggested, strongly suggested, that I am to keep putting out my series, because I have 7 series planned, would not be prudent. Having said that, we have a large 6-inch wisdom figure that we designed a while back, and I'm getting sick of waiting, quite frankly. Development moves a lot slower in television world than action figure world. And so I'm hoping once the pandemic is over, and the backlog is over, that I will be able to get that figure into production. I had hoped for the end of 2021, but listening to everyone talk about their factory problems, I'm suspicious that it might be the beginning of 2022 at this point. But she's beautiful, and I want to get her out, and I, you know, that's where I am. But in the meantime, right now, I have a story Bible, I have a pitch ready, and I'm just ready to go on that end, and hopefully we'll have good news on that at some point.
Awesome. I look forward to pre-ordering that figure in some capacity. Yeah.
Thank you.
John, how about Dime Novel Legends, man? What's coming? What's coming in the Old West?
Well, we've got a lot of product in the pipeline, as I said when we were talking privately. You know, we've got some stuff that's been a little overdue. I'm most excited about our first 2 actor likeness deals with Keone Young and W.R. Brown, who you may know from Deadwood. Those are coming. Those will be offered this year for delivery in about a year from now. And that is turned out to be a much bigger deal than I anticipated. We got 3 or 4 more people really interested. We've got a licensing presentation to do with the State Fair Board of Texas for a figure for them potentially, and you know, just lots of really cool add-on stuff. And the one thing I did want to mention before we get off of here, is I think it may be a first for indie companies. We're going to cross over with Eagle Force and Bill and do one of the classic characters built on our stuff out of his IP. So I'm looking forward to getting that out here and letting everybody have a look at it. Eagle Force Wild Bill's coming soon, folks.
I love that. I love that you guys are, it's cool, right? It's like teaming up, and like as a kid playing with toys, I loved doing that with my action figures. You guys are doing it like within your mythos. That's so cool.
If we could just get everybody at the same scale, that's all I'm saying. So
No,
yeah,
What's coming up with articulated icons? Anything good?
we've got our last collection on a container right now, and then we're changing the name. We're dropping articulated icons. There's been some research that we've done over the past year with different salespeople and marketing people, and before I can even finish saying articulated icons, they say drop the name.
Wow.
So we're in a big rebranding phase right now. We've just worked with a digital designer to work on a new Zwoosh logo, and we've also done a whole new stylescape, and we'll be implementing that across the site, as well as doing some major development on the site, which will be fun. In regards to toys, we're working on a new sculpt. It's almost done. We've got our sculptor working on the fittings, and we're working with a factory to hopefully get that to market end of year, probably beginning of 2022. And we're finalizing a license deal to bring a licensed 6-inch figure to market.
Oh, wow, that's rad.
That's really cool.
Proper scale. Good job.
Greg, what's going on with Zica? Greg?
Right now, we're just focusing again on the O-ring figures. And in March, I partnered up with another company called Uru Toys, and they're working on a vehicle for these figures. It's called a Night Wolf that's compatible with both the slightly larger scale 4-inch modern military figures, and then with these O-ring figures I've got in development. So that should be interesting to see how that goes.
I hear it looks cool.
Yeah, it doesn't have the springs on it to show how the shocks work, but it looks a little weird in some of the pictures, but people have been impressed. So,
That's awesome.
Fingers crossed.
So I could probably just go into my email and list all the pre-orders I've paid for at Super 7 to give you the scoop on what's coming from them, but I'll let Brian tell you instead. What's coming, man?
We started shipping Voltron this weekend, and that'll be next week. Right now, Thundercats, Thunder Tank is up for pre-order for another month. We've got, we're also making available again 3 of the characters out of Wave 1 and 2 for Thundercats, because so many people missed them and the secondary market was a little crazy. So you can get Lino and Panthro to drive the Thunder Tank.
Yay.
We've got there's a whole bunch of new stuff. The Transformers Ultimate figures are up right now. There's, we're about to release Gem and the Hologram for 3 3/4.
Oh, that's cool.
There's
Really outrageous.
3 3/4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line that's coming out. We've got Wave 3 of the Worst finally getting its
That's very exciting.
out of the factory, which will be nice, and a couple other things. I mean, there's a lot going on, which is exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Brian, you know what's funny is I started the panel. I didn't introduce myself. Nobody knows what the hell I do other than talk about toys. I'm a writer. I've worked on Transformers about the last 5 years. I probably own 9 or 10 Optimus Prime figures. And there's this question that comes is, how many Optimus Primes do you need? And then you guys put out this figure and I'm like, well, I need one more. That thing is awesome. You figured out a way to make an Optimus Prime that has not been done yet and have it include cool stuff. And I clicked pre-order really fast on that thing, man. I can't wait. And I saw some of the new stuff that you guys announced, more Transformer characters coming out in that line. And I love your choices. You guys really made some unique choices and are offering stuff that we otherwise couldn't get.
Action Masters for the win.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of coming from the collector side. If you're coming from the business side, you make Optimus and Megatron, maybe you get to Soundwave. There's a couple of very distinct characters. You can't not have them. But that was just like you said with Optimus. It was like, how do I make an Optimus that you don't have? Why do you need to buy one from me? There's so many beautiful Optimus Prime toys out there that are transforming and die cast, and they're amazing. And I was like, but people aren't going into the moments those characters live in, like Optimus Prime surfing or Optimus Prime dunking basketball. I think there's 1 or 2 toys that have ever been made with Optimus Prime with his jetpack. Man, you just don't get those. So let me make that stuff that you don't have. And then secondarily, go down into the weeds, which is where it's more interesting for me anyways. Like if now that we have announced all 3 waves, like Alligatorcon, it's like nobody's making Alligatorcon or Tarn from
Tarn. Woo!
and so and that's really what it is. It's like, I don't need to make these other people are making great toys of Optimus and Megatron. I don't need to make that. Let me go make my version of this stuff and the stuff that I'd like to have, which is stuff I don't have on my shelf. And hopefully, that'll transition into the Transformers collectors. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, but I'll still have made the ones I want to have.
Right. Chris, how about you, my friend? What's coming up?
Like I said, Bible figures. I mean, that's going to be interesting. I went with politics first, and now I'm going with religion.
Yeah, the things you should avoid, and you're doing them all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Actually, wait, hold on 1 second. I forgot I have it here just to top it off. The packaging will be a little Bible.
Love it.
Okay, and this one doesn't have it. This one does, and on the inside, it'll be a very nice, solid
I love it.
box. And on the inside, it'll have a literal page intro.
Oh, that's great.
And a little biography,
Yeah.
just in case you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
So you're leading off with Methuselah, right?
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Yeah.
We shall see. No, I mean, you know what? It's gonna be a nice mix, and it's actually, I want to make it educational to a degree, because the bio will be most likely in English, Spanish, and Hebrew, and then I'll probably also have like a parchment paper scroll with something, either like like the Beatitudes or a certain prayer that relates to each character, and yes, there will be multi-ethnic Gizai, I guess you can call it.
Right.
There will be different skin colors because
that's awesome. Yeah. I think that almost takes care of everybody. Rich, our moderator with the most, any news? What can we look from you for toy related entertainment coming up?
Well, we are plugging ahead with more seasons of A Toy Store Near You. We're gonna try and knock out maybe another 30 of those, and hopefully more, and try and shine a spotlight on all the indie toy stores out in the country and across the world, really, and just tell their story, because I think I don't know, they're our last bastion of hope to keep people invested in the hobby. So stay strong. So some more of that, and a bunch of other stuff I can't really talk about right now, but just stay tuned to Nacelle. We have some good stuff coming in.
Well, thank you for co-moderating with me, sir. And thank you to all you amazing toy creators. Everyone stay safe and keep making awesome stuff. And WonderCon 2021, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.